D7, a creature containment facility known as Project Asylum, hidden deep in the Nevada desert, far more secretive than Area 51 or S4. You won't find it on any map. This place isn't about UFOs or secret aircraft. It's something darker, something terrifying. They're containing cryptids, creatures straight from our darkest urban legends. Wendigos, skinwalkers, Mothman. They're all real, and those are the nice ones compared to the ones you've never heard of, especially the ones engineered. They're locked up behind reinforced glass and steel, the most advanced prison on the planet. But containment is just the beginning. They're conducting experiments, genetic manipulation, crossing human DNA with these cryptids. It's all part of something called the Ascension Project. Imagine humans volunteering or being abducted and fused with creatures so nightmarish it defies belief. Hundreds of them, subjects transformed beyond recognition. So at this facility, they have multiple projects running concurrently, but it's extremely compartmentalized. Only a select few have oversight of them all, and I was one of them.
What are they trying to accomplish?
Any and everything. To sum it all up, the Ascension Project is pretty self-explanatory. They're trying to make a superior human, or a superior being altogether. They believe the end times are coming, and they want to evolve selected humans to be able to survive whatever is coming.
And what would that be?
I have some theories, but that's for another time.
Can you go into detail about this Subject R32?
This thing was apparently dug up in modern-day Iraq, right beneath the ruins of an ancient Sumerian temple. We're talking about a site that's around 6,000 years old. Archaeologists thought they'd just found another ancient deity's resting place. Nothing new there, but things got weird fast. The tomb walls were covered in carvings of faceless figures, hidden in shadows. Even creepier, they discovered ancient tablets and hieroglyphics that warned about something called the Shade Walker. Ancient Sumerian priests were terrified of this entity. It fed on darkness, manipulated shadows, always lurking just out of sight. They trapped it underground using fire, reflective metals, and some seriously intense rituals. Hardcore ancient magic. Now enter the modern-day folks, the hunters. Think shadowy government organization vibes. They thought they'd hit the jackpot and brought R32 back to Facility D7. For decades, they kept it locked in this ultra-bright containment chamber, 24-hour lights blazing. They genuinely believed they'd tamed this thing. Big mistake. Fast forward to a night they now call the Blackout Incident. Suddenly, boom, all power at Facility D7 goes out. Backup generators mysteriously fail. Within seconds, it's total darkness. That's all it took for R32 to awaken. Imagine this thing dissolving into the shadows, completely invisible. Alarms went off briefly, and then nothing. Absolute silence. One warden was dragged into the darkness. His armor, found moments later, twisted like a crushed soda can. Another tried to fire his weapon. The shadow wrapped around him, snuffing out his visor lights before consuming him entirely. The third warden, panicked, isolated, vanished without a sound. Only his helmet remained, slowly rolling across the cold floor. By the time backup lights came back on, it was over. Subject R32 was gone, and now people everywhere are claiming sightings of these weird shadow figures. The real problem is the men who think they can control monsters, who stare into the abyss long enough to convince themselves they can weaponize it. That's how the hunters were born. They weren't a product of one government or a single agency. They were a compromise, forged in darkness. After World War II, when the world realized conventional warfare had limits, the surviving powers began looking elsewhere, digging through Nazi occult archives, decoding ancient symbols pulled from burnt-out catacombs, dissecting corpses that didn't bleed red. They called it Project Asylum. But it wasn't about sanctuary. It was about binding the uncontainable. The hunters were the result, built in secret, trained in silence, forged in nightmares. They're not listed anywhere, not in military databases, not in global contractor registries, not even in the black budget documents they use to hide the rest of D7. They exist only in whispered rumors, data fragments buried in corrupted drives, hand-scratched names on forgotten walls. And when they arrive, it's already too late. One incident stays with me. Sub-level 9, a hybrid breach. We called the subject Riven, part human, part arachnid. fused with something we found during a dig near the ruins of Göbekli Tepe. The thing moved like time didn't apply to it. Glitches in motion, a blur of fangs and clicking joints. It killed 17 personnel in under 4 minutes. The emergency lockdown failed. That's when the prototypes came. 3 of them. No words, no hesitation. They entered the corridor, deployed something that didn't look like a weapon. It looked like a concept. Light bent around it. Reality shuddered. Riven screamed, not in fear, but in recognition, like it knew what they were, what they had become. It tried to run. It didn't make it 2 steps. Afterward, there was no body, no remains, just a lingering smell of ozone and burnt metal, and a faint hum, like distant chanting heard through water.
Who were the prototypes, and what exactly happened to Riven?
I once asked one of the Neurocom's techs what they saw on the internal feed before it blacked out. Her hands shook. She wouldn't look at me. She just said, "They didn't kill Riven. They deleted him," like a bad thought. But to answer your question, the prototypes are defense units, emergency use only, fail-safes in case of a catastrophic breach. But unofficially, only 3 exist, and that's all there will ever be. They're not like the hybrids, not like the failed human anomaly fusions that scream in sub-level 11. They aren't like the genetically grown weapons bred for speed or fear. The prototypes are something else, something crafted man, machine, myth, half biological, half mechanical, each one a walking paradox, a fusion of the most bleeding-edge nanotech and flesh, grown in zero-gravity vats. Their creation took over 2 decades, and each required the disassembly and repurposing of over a dozen lower-tier programs. Each prototype was built, not born, assembled from stolen DNA strands, fractured AI cognition clusters, and black shelf weapon platforms recovered from crash sites no one has clearance to even theorize about. They don't speak, they don't sleep, and they don't operate independently. They always move as a unit. No one knows where they're stored, or if they're stored. Some believe they don't live inside D7 at all, but beneath it, or between it, somewhere in the folds of space carved by the anomalies themselves. There's another layer to the mystery, one even I hesitated to put on record. I misspoke earlier when I said I held the highest security clearance. Truth is, there are a handful of us who run the compartmentalized programs. Just as I said before, we oversee the Wardens, Project Asylum, the Ascension Initiative, the entire shadow tree of research that defines D7. But even we're not the top. There are whispers, always whispers, of 3 individuals, never named, never documented, just referred to in hushed tones by the few who've heard them called by code name the Black Secret Holders. They're said to hold the true clearance. Beyond what we thought was the highest, they carry something different, rumored to be a black card, made not of plastic or metal, but of some reflective material that absorbs data and light. They don't walk the halls, they don't appear on security logs, but they exist, and it's said they're the reason the prototypes exist at all, built for them, by them. No one knows if the prototypes are conscious, if they think, if they remember what they were before they were fused to synthetic bone and armored nerve fiber. Some believe each one holds a consciousness fragment of a black secret holder. Others say they're empty vessels, AI shells guided by commands from a place outside time. One theory, one I can't shake, claims the prototypes are what happens when you complete Ascension, when the hybrid project succeeds too well, when a post-human being accepts machine integration and ceases to be a singular entity.
You mentioned the hunters, the ones who capture these cryptids or supernatural beings, and then the prototypes. They're for emergency use only, in case of a catastrophic breach. But what about the Wardens? You kind of breezed over them when you mentioned the blackout incident involving Subject R32. Who are they exactly? What's their purpose? Are they similar to the prototypes?
That's a good question. Most people confuse them. Hunters, Wardens, prototypes. They lump them together under the same shadow, but they serve very different functions, different purposes. But the Wardens, they're the ones who keep the internal order. They don't leave D7. They don't speak. They don't eat with staff or sleep in the barracks. They appear when there's a deviation from protocol, a breach of behavior, or when someone opens a door they weren't meant to know existed. They aren't soldiers. They're not human, not entirely. They look like men, standard issue black suits. Traditionally, if they're not on high alert, If so, they're fitted with black tactical armor, no insignia, identical builds, mirror-visored helmets that don't reflect your face back at you, just emptiness. And when they move, it's like time forgets how to sequence properly. People who've gotten too close say their radios glitch, heart rates spike, even thoughts fragment for a few seconds. You'll be walking down Corridor C, alone you think, and suddenly you feel them before you see them. 3, maybe 4, just standing there, blocking your path, saying nothing. You're not even sure why you stopped walking, but your instincts scream, don't move, don't speak, don't lie. You ask if they're like the prototypes? Not quite. The prototypes are crafted, built with a purpose, to destroy whatever broke the rules of reality. The Wardens? I don't think they were built. I think they were invited. Some believe they're the first generation of successful Ascension subjects, early hybrids, stable, obedient, and shaped into sentinels before their identities could collapse. Others claim the Wardens are what became of personnel who violated certain clearance thresholds, people who learned too much, too quickly, and were repurposed rather than executed. There's a story, unconfirmed, but it circles among the Level 5 staff, that no one has ever seen a Warden's face. One guy tried, security chief, thought he was brave, thought he had clearance. He pulled one of their visors off during a standoff with a rogue specimen. 3 hours later, all footage from that section was wiped. The man's personnel file vanished. Cafeteria staff said they remembered him working there, but couldn't recall his name, voice or face. He didn't die. He just ceased. The Wardens patrol the lowest levels of D7, especially anything below sub-level 12. That's where the real anomalies are. The things that don't scream or bleed. The things that change you just by being seen or understood. They guard the mirror room. They stand outside the sealed vaults. They're always there during transport of high-tier specimens, especially ones marked with conceptual contagion risk. The hunters are the net, and the prototypes are the blade. The Wardens are the barrier between us and what's locked beneath. Even we, the ones who run the compartmentalized programs, the ones who authorized Project Ascension, don't command the Wardens. They don't answer to us. They answer to someone else, or something else. There's a theory, some say a fact, that the Black Secret holders didn't just create the Wardens. They are the Wardens, or at least their will made manifest. And if you're wondering why I don't know the true origins of the Wardens, even though I have oversight of most of what goes on here within D7, it's because doing this line of work takes a toll on you in every way imaginable. If I didn't need to know, even though I had the authority and the clearance to get read in, I chose not to, because sometimes not knowing is the only way to stay sane.